My 28-year-old wedding is coming up in 2 months, and my fiancé, Dave, who is 30 years old, and I are excited to finally get married after being together for 7 years. We've been planning everything to make sure our day is perfect. My sister, Emma, who is 26 years old, is an aspiring author. She's been working on her first novel for the past few years and recently finished it. While I'm glad she found something she likes, I'm not thrilled with her recent idea. A few weeks ago, Emma told me she was planning a big book launch. I was excited for her until she said she wanted to do it at my wedding reception. She thought it would be perfect because so many family and friends would be there, and it would save her the cost of planning a separate event. I was shocked and told her that I didn't think it was a good idea. Our wedding day is supposed to be about Dave and me, not about promoting her book. I suggested she could hand out invitations for a separate launch party instead. I talked to Dave, and even he agreed. Emma was furious. She accused me of being selfish and not supporting her dreams. She argued that it wouldn't take much time and would actually add excitement to the event. She even suggested that it could be her wedding gift to us, a way to entertain the guests. At that time, I honestly thought that she had some faulty wiring in her brain. I stood my ground and said no, which led to a huge argument. Now, Emma isn't speaking to me, and my parents are pressuring me to reconsider. They think it's a reasonable request and that I should be more accommodating. Well, it's nothing new. They always do that. They say families should support each other and that I'm being too stubborn. Here's some background. Emma has always been the golden child in my parents' eyes. They've enabled her for years, letting her live with them rent-free and covering most of her expenses, even though she's never held a job or earned a penny on her own. She went to an arts college where she discovered her passion for writing. Emma is lucky she can write well, but it's frustrating to see her get a free pass on everything just because she's the favorite one and can write well. I'm no saint. During our argument, I said some nasty things and riled her up even more because I was so furious. Years of built-up frustration and feeling second to her just came out all at once. I regret how I handled it now, but I also feel strongly that my wedding day should be about me and Dave. Now for an update, I've been getting texts every day from my parents. They aren't aggressive or anything, but today they said that I'm being a kid. I was never like this. How do I tell them that I have always suffered being the obedient, mature girl they always had, but never valued enough? I feel conflicted. I want to support my sister just to make things go back to normal, but I'm also tired of my family. What do I do? How do I handle it? Am I the jerk for refusing to let her use my wedding as a platform for her book? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1, not the idiot. This day is about you and Dave. I was already thinking she was the golden child before you said it, because one thing they can't stand is not having all the attention all the time. She doesn't just want to launch at your wedding. She just doesn't want all the attention on you and not her. I would be very hesitant to invite her to the wedding. As for your parents, may I suggest telling them they can pay for an event for her launch and invite all the family and everyone. This decision will not change. You were even nice enough to offer a compromise of allowing her to hand out invitations at your wedding. If they keep pushing, may I also suggest disinviting them until they realize this is you and Dave's day? Just out of curiosity, did she announce she finished the book after you announced your day that you will be married? Comment 2. Not the idiot. Hire security, double-check with the vendors, even put passwords on your stuff. And make sure they know there is to be no other event happening and email you the instant someone suggests to them that you said they could do something. Threaten to uninvite your parents if they don't back off about this, which is yours and your future husband's day. Threaten to uninvite your sister. Go low contact afterwards because they clearly do not add to your happiness. Now for the update, thanks for all the comments from the last post. So here's what's been happening since then. 2 weeks ago, I decided to sit down with Emma to try and talk things out. I thought maybe if we had a calm conversation, we could find some middle ground. I invited her to a coffee shop, hoping a neutral place would help. When she arrived, she looked annoyed but agreed to hear me out. I started by apologizing for the harsh words I said during our argument. I told her that I was genuinely happy for her and her book, but I still felt strongly that my wedding day should be about Dave and me. Emma listened but didn't seem moved. She reiterated that she thought her book launch would add excitement to the wedding, and that it wouldn't take much time. I suggested again that she could hand out invitations for a separate launch party, but she dismissed the idea, saying it wouldn't have the same impact. The conversation ended with her storming out, leaving me feeling more frustrated than ever. A few days later, my parents invited me over for dinner. I knew they wanted to talk about the situation with Emma, but I hoped we could have a civil discussion. As soon as I walked in, they started pressuring me to reconsider. They said that Emma was really hurt and that I should be more supportive. I tried to explain my side, but they kept interrupting, saying that family should come first and that I was being unreasonable. I felt like I was hitting a brick wall. My parents have always favored Emma, and this was just another example. I left their house feeling defeated and more isolated than ever. Dave has been supportive, but I can tell he's getting tired of the drama. He suggested we elope to avoid the stress, but I want our wedding to be a celebration with our family and friends. Then something unexpected happened. Emma showed up at my apartment one evening looking upset. She said she had been thinking about our conversation and wanted to apologize for her behavior. She admitted that she had been selfish and that she understood why I didn't want her book launch at the wedding. I was relieved and thought we had finally reached a resolution. But then she dropped a bombshell. She said that our parents had offered to pay for her book launch if she agreed to drop the idea of doing it at the wedding. I was stunned. My parents had never offered to pay for anything for me, not even a small part of the wedding expenses. I felt a mix of anger and betrayal. Emma said she felt guilty about accepting their offer but didn't see any other way to make her dream come true. I didn't know what to say. I felt like my parents had chosen Emma over me once again. I told Emma that I needed some time to process everything and asked her to leave. After she left, I broke down in tears. Dave tried to comfort me, but I felt like my world was falling apart. The next day, I decided to confront my parents. I went to their house and told them how hurt I was by their actions. They tried to justify their decision, saying that they were just trying to keep the peace and support both of their daughters. I told them that it felt like they were choosing Emma over me and that it wasn't fair. They didn't have much to say in response, and I left feeling even more alone. In the days that followed, I tried to focus on the wedding planning, but it was hard to stay motivated. I felt like my family was falling apart, and I didn't know how to fix it. Dave suggested we take a break from the drama and go on a weekend getaway. We went to a small cabin in the mountains, and it was a much-needed escape. We spent the weekend hiking, talking, and just enjoying each other's company. It reminded me why I wanted to marry him in the first place. When we got back, I felt a little better, but the situation with my family was still weighing on me. I decided to reach out to a therapist to help me navigate my feelings and figure out how to move forward. The therapist helped me see that I needed to set boundaries with my family and prioritize my own happiness. I started by having a candid conversation with Emma. I told her that I loved her and wanted to support her, but that I needed her to respect my boundaries. She seemed to understand and agreed to keep her book launch separate from the wedding. It was a small victory, but it felt like a step in the right direction. However, things took a turn for the worse when my parents found out I was seeing a therapist. They accused me of overreacting and said that I was making a big deal out of nothing. They even suggested that I was being influenced by Dave and that he was trying to drive a wedge between me and my family. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It felt like they were trying to gaslight me into thinking I was the problem. I decided to take a break from my parents and focus on my own well-being. I stopped responding to their texts and calls, and it felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I knew it wasn't a permanent solution, but I needed some space to heal and figure out my next steps. As the wedding day approaches, I'm trying to stay positive and focus on the things that matter. Dave and I are excited to start our life together, and I'm hopeful that my relationship with my family will improve in time. But for now, I'm taking things one day at a time and trying to find peace in the midst of the chaos. Thanks for reading. Am I the idiot for calling out my spineless ex at a school picnic and filing a restraining order? I, now 28 years old, was with my ex, Kenny, now 36 years old, for close to 2 years. He has a son from a previous relationship. His ex, Samantha, was incredibly toxic. She was the type to try to keep their son from Kenny, though he always fought her back on it. She hated me for simply existing. I was always polite and cordial. I met her before I met their son. I always made it clear I wasn't trying to be his mom, but she'd always text me nasty things. she'd tell their son terrible lies about me. On more than one occasion, she tried to get Kenny back. The only times he ever stood up to her were to A, make sure he saw his son. He'd threaten to take her to court if she tried to break their agreement. B, if she made moves on him, which I appreciated. However, he'd never defend me in any other way. If she'd lie to their son, text me nasty things, etc., he'd beg for me to let it go because he didn't want drama. I couldn't take it anymore. For a long time, Kenny told me this is just what it's like dating someone with a kid, and if I couldn't handle it, I shouldn't date someone with one. Eventually, I had enough and walked away. It hurt because I loved Kenny and also his son, but I knew it was a toxic relationship. 5 years later, and I've been in a new relationship for 3 years, currently engaged. My fiancé has 2 kids from his previous marriage. At first, I was hesitant to date someone with kids, but we clicked, and I'm so glad I gave it a try. His ex is lovely. We get along well. She's not threatened by my presence and encourages her kids to be nice to me. We're not besties or anything, but we get along. She's not trashing me, and it's a breath of fresh air. As it turns out, Kenny's son and my soon-to-be stepkids go to the same school. I only found out when I attended an end-of-the-year picnic, and he was there for his son. We were politely chatting, and he asked who I was there for. When I told him, he was surprised. He said he thought I couldn't handle dating someone with kids. I said it was never about the kids. I was going to let it go, but he kept insisting I had a lot of growing up to do if I was going to be a stepmom, and I better understand how things work. I eventually told him, it was never about me dating someone with a kid. It was about me dating someone spineless with a kid. You're the one that needs to learn and grow, not me. He started acting stupid and clearly wanted a fight, so I just walked away. My fiancé, his ex, and their kids had no clue about the conversation, though I did tell my fiancé who Kenny was. Samantha was there too, but she kept her distance and just glared daggers at me. To add, I was talking to a mutual friend of mine in Kenny's who said my comments were unnecessary, and I almost caused a fight. He said I should have just walked away without saying all that. Am I the idiot? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1, not the idiot. While the spineless comment was sharp, it's the truth. I understand Kenny was attempting to balance his ex and you because he was likely afraid that pissing off crazy butt Samantha would cause turmoil for him and his child. But you have to be a man at some point. The key and best aspect of the story is you got out of that dumpster fire of a scenario. Comment 2. Your friend is way off base. If he had the stomach for a public fight, then his being a female genitalia wouldn't have ruined your relationship. What your friend probably meant was, you almost caused him to show his true colors in a public setting. You did him a favor. Now for the update. Hey everyone, a lot has happened since my last post. After that awkward encounter with Kenny at the school picnic, I thought things would settle down, but I was wrong. The next week, I started noticing Kenny hanging around the school more often. At first, I thought it was just a coincidence, but then it became clear he was trying to get under my skin. He'd make snide comments whenever he saw me, like, hope you're ready for the real challenges of being a stepmom, and let's see how long you last this time. One day, I was picking up my fiancé's kids when Kenny approached me again. This time, he brought up Samantha, saying she had been telling him all sorts of things about me. He claimed she said I was trying to replace her in her son's life and that I was bad-mouthing her to the kids. I knew it was a lie, but it still stung. I told him to stop listening to her and to leave me alone, but he just smirked and walked away. That night, I talked to my fiancé about what had been happening. He was supportive and suggested we talk to the school about it. We decided to set up a meeting with the principal to discuss Kenny's behavior and see if there was anything they could do to help. The principal was understanding and said they would keep an eye on the situation, but there wasn't much they could do unless Kenny crossed a line. A few days later, things escalated. I was at the grocery store when I ran into Samantha. She cornered me in one of the aisles and started yelling at me, accusing me of trying to steal her son and ruin her life. I tried to stay calm and explain that I had no intention of doing any of that, but she wouldn't listen. She kept getting louder and more aggressive, and eventually a store employee had to intervene and ask her to leave. After that incident, I started feeling anxious whenever I had to go out in public. I was constantly looking over my shoulder, worried that I'd run into Kenny or Samantha again. My fiancé noticed how stressed I was and suggested we take a weekend trip to get away from everything and clear our heads. We went to a cabin in the mountains, and for a couple of days, it felt like everything was back to normal. But as soon as we returned, the anxiety came rushing back. The final straw came when Kenny showed up at our house one evening. He was drunk and belligerent, demanding to talk to me. My fiancé tried to get him to leave, but Kenny wouldn't back down. He started shouting about how I was ruining his life and how I had no right to be around his son. My fiancé called the police and they came and took Kenny away. We decided to file a restraining order against him to protect ourselves and the kids. The fallout from all of this has been tough. My fiancé's ex has been supportive, but she's also worried about the impact this is having on the kids. They've been asking questions about why Kenny is so angry and why the police had to come to our house. We've tried to explain things in a way they can understand, but it's been hard. I've also been struggling with my own feelings. Part of me feels guilty for standing up to Kenny at the picnic, wondering if I should have just walked away like our mutual friend suggested. But another part of me knows that I had to stand up for myself, and that Kenny's behavior is not my fault. It's been a constant battle between feeling empowered and feeling overwhelmed. In the midst of all this, I've been reflecting on my past with Kenny and how it led to where we are now. I remember when we first started dating, how charming and attentive he was, but as time went on, I started to see the cracks in his facade. He was always so focused on keeping the peace with Samantha that he neglected my feelings and needs. I tried to be understanding, but it became clear that he was never going to change. I also think about my own upbringing and how it shaped my views on relationships. My parents had a tumultuous marriage, and I always promised myself that I wouldn't settle for anything less than a healthy, supportive partnership. That's why I eventually walked away from Kenny, even though it was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made. Now, I'm in a much better place with my fiancé, but this situation with Kenny has brought up a lot of old wounds. It's been a reminder of how far I've come and how much I've grown, but also of the challenges that still lie ahead. I'm determined to protect my new family and create a positive environment for my stepkids, but it's going to take time and effort. As for what's next, we're focusing on moving forward and finding ways to cope with the stress. We're considering family therapy to help the kids process everything that's happened and to strengthen our bond as a family. We're also looking into legal options to ensure that Kenny and Samantha can't continue to harass us. Thank you for reading. Am I the idiot for refusing to spend a weekend with my husband's toxic family? 32 years old, have been married to my husband, 35 years old, for 8 years. We have 2 children together, a 7-year-old daughter and a 4-year-old son. Our marriage has been relatively smooth, except for one recurring issue: my relationship with his family. From the beginning, my husband's family has been difficult to deal with. His mother, in particular, has never liked me. When we first got engaged, she made several snide remarks about my background and upbringing, implying that I wasn't good enough for her son. His siblings followed her lead, often excluding me from family gatherings or making me feel unwelcome when I did attend. Despite my best efforts to build a relationship with them, things never improved. My husband has always been supportive of me, but he's also very close to his family. He often tries to mediate and encourages me to attend family events, hoping that things will get better over time. Unfortunately, every time I attend a family gathering, I leave feeling humiliated and disrespected. It has reached a point where I dread any event that involves his family. Recently, my husband informed me about a big family reunion his parents are hosting. This is the first large gathering since the pandemic, and they are planning a weekend-long event at a rented vacation home. My husband is very excited about it and wants us all to go. He believes this could be a fresh start and that his family will be on their best behavior. I, on the other hand, am dreading it. The thought of spending an entire weekend with his family, who have never shown me any kindness, makes me anxious. I voiced my concerns to my husband and told him that I didn't want to go. I suggested that he take the kids and go without me. This way, he can enjoy the reunion without any tension, and I can have a stress-free weekend at home. My husband was very upset by my suggestion. He argued that it would look bad if I didn't attend, and it might create more tension between me and his family. He also feels that it's important for our children to see both of us together at family events, showing a united front. He accused me of not trying hard enough to mend the relationship with his family, and said that my refusal to attend could be seen as me giving up on them entirely. I explained to him that it's not that I haven't tried. It's just that I'm tired of being treated poorly despite my efforts. I told him that I need to prioritize my mental health and that subjecting myself to more mistreatment isn't worth it. My husband then accused me of being selfish and not considering his feelings or the importance of family unity. Now, we're at an impasse. He wants me to go for the sake of family harmony, but I don't see why I should put myself through another painful experience. I feel torn because I do want to support my husband and show a united front for our children, but not at the cost of my own well-being. I've discussed this with a few friends, and opinions are split. Some believe that I should go to support my husband and give his family another chance. Others think that I have every right to prioritize my mental health and refuse to attend. So, am I the jerk for refusing to attend my husband's family reunion because of past mistreatment? Should I suck it up for the sake of family unity? Or is it reasonable to protect myself from a situation that has consistently caused me distress? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. He's got it all backwards. Your being around his hurtful and rude family will not display anything but the fact that their mother's feelings are invalid, and that their extended family members treat mom like garbage, and dad is perfectly okay with it. He is also a totally terrible husband who is using you as his meat shield. Oh, heaven forbid she isn't there to hold my drink and serve as my mental buffer. Comment 2. If I were in this situation, as the husband, I would totally tell off my family. You and your kids are now his primary family. If his childhood family is judgmental, then I see no reason why you should go. He's gaslighting you, saying that you don't take his feelings into consideration, as he doesn't take your feelings into consideration. Now for the update. Thanks for all the comments on my last post. So, here's what happened over the past week. After our heated argument, my husband and I didn't talk much for a couple of days. The tension in the house was thick, and even our kids could sense something was off. I felt guilty for causing this rift, but also stood firm in my decision. I knew I couldn't subject myself to another weekend of feeling like an outsider. Midweek, my husband came home from work looking more stressed than usual. He sat me down and told me that his mother had called him earlier that day. She had heard from one of his siblings that I was hesitant about attending the reunion. She didn't hold back her feelings and accused me of trying to drive a wedge between him and his family. My husband was visibly upset, and I could see the toll this was taking on him. I decided to reach out to his mother directly. I thought maybe if we had a heart-to-heart conversation, she might understand my perspective. I called her, and the conversation started off civilly enough. I explained how I felt and why I was hesitant to attend the reunion. But as soon as I mentioned my feelings of being unwelcome, she became defensive. She insisted that I was imagining things and that her family had always tried to include me. The conversation quickly turned into a blame game, and we ended it without any resolution. The next day, my husband suggested we see a marriage counselor. He thought a neutral third party might help us navigate this conflict. I agreed, hoping it would help us find some common ground. We had our first session on Friday. The counselor listened to both of our sides and suggested that we try to find a compromise. She proposed that I attend the reunion but set boundaries for myself, like taking breaks when I felt overwhelmed. I reluctantly agreed to give it a try. My husband seemed relieved, and we started making plans for the weekend. However, things took an unexpected turn on Saturday morning. My husband's brother showed up at our house unannounced. He wanted to talk to me alone. My husband was hesitant, but eventually agreed. His brother apologized for the way the family had treated me over the years. He admitted that their behavior was influenced by their mother and that they never gave me a fair chance. He said he wanted to make things right and hoped I would come to the reunion. His sincerity caught me off guard, and I felt a glimmer of hope that maybe things could change. Feeling somewhat reassured, I decided to go to the reunion. We packed our bags and headed to the vacation home. The first evening was awkward but uneventful. I kept my distance and observed how the family interacted. My husband's mother was her usual self, making passive-aggressive comments, but I tried to let them slide. On the second day, things took a turn for the worse. During a family game, my husband's mother made a snide remark about my parenting skills. I couldn't hold back any longer and confronted her in front of everyone. I told her how her constant criticism and exclusion had affected me, and that I was tired of pretending everything was fine. The room fell silent, and I could see the shock on everyone's faces. My husband tried to mediate, but his mother stormed out of the room. The rest of the family seemed divided. Some supported me, while others sided with her. The tension was obvious, and I felt like I had made things worse. I spent the rest of the day avoiding everyone, feeling a mix of anger and regret. That evening, my husband's father approached me. He apologized for his wife's behavior and admitted that he should have intervened sooner. He said he respected me for standing up for myself and hoped we could move forward. His words meant a lot, but I still felt uneasy about the whole situation. The next morning, my husband and I decided to leave early. We packed up and said our goodbyes. The drive home was quiet, and I could tell my husband was deep in thought. When we got home, we sat down and talked about everything that had happened. He admitted that he had been blind to his family's behavior and promised to support me more in the future. The fallout from the reunion was significant. My husband's mother refused to speak to me, and some of his siblings were distant. However, a few of them reached out to me privately, expressing their support and understanding. It felt like a small victory, but I knew we still had a long way to go. Reflecting on the past week, I realized that my husband's family dynamics were more complicated than I had thought. His mother had always been the dominant figure, and her influence over the family was strong. My husband's father had always been passive, and his siblings followed their mother's lead to avoid conflict. I also learned more about my husband's childhood. He grew up in a household where his mother's word was law, and questioning her was not an option. This explained why he had always tried to mediate rather than confront the issue head-on. Understanding this helped me see why he had struggled to support me fully. In the end, the reunion was a turning point for us. It forced us to confront the issues that had been simmering for years. While it was painful, it also opened the door for honest conversations and a chance to rebuild our relationship on a stronger foundation. Thanks for reading. If you liked this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day!